Hi KH! Today's story is a story that I never knew about until my cousin told me about it. So my cousin, who's a little bit older than me, read this when she was little, and when I saw it in a bookstore, I decided I needed to buy it because she liked it. So it's called The Little Fur Family. Story by Margaret Wise Brown. Pictures by Garth Williams. And Margaret Wise Brown is the same author who wrote Goodnight Moon. And do you remember the other story that she wrote that I read to you? It's one of the YouTube read-alouds. It was The Important Book. That's also by Margaret Wise Brown. So let's find out what this little fur family does. Little fur family. There was a little fur family, warm as toast, smaller than most, in little fur coats, and they lived in a warm wooden tree. The little fur father said good morning one day, put on his hat, and went away out into his little fur world. The little fur mother bathed her fur child, and off he went to play in the wild wood where they lived. It was a wild, wild wood. Wild flowers grew all over the ground, and wild winds blew through the air. Wild nuts fell from the wild nut trees, and wild grass tickled the fur child's nose, tickled his nose and made him sneeze. Achoo! Achoo! That sneeze woke up his grandpa, who lived in a hollow stump. And Grandpa came walking, thump, 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 and walked out of his hollow stump and said, bless you, my little fur grandson. Every time you sneeze, achoo! So now the grandpa sneezed. Bless you, said the little fur child. Thank you, said his grandpa. Then old grandpa went thump, 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 and walked back into his hollow stump. And the fur child went on through the dark and sunny woods till he came to a nice little river full of fish. The fish didn't have any fur, and they didn't have any feet, and they swam around under the river. The little fur child watched them for a long time. Then he reached in the river and pulled out a fish and looked at it. And then, kerplunk, he threw it back in the river. So if you had a fish, let's throw it back into the river. Kerplunk. He reached into the air and he caught a flying bug. And he held it in his hand and he looked at it. So pretend you see a bug flying in the air, and then you put it to your hand and you catch it, and then you look at it. And if you look closely, what kind of bug did the little fur child find and catch? It's a ladybug. The bug didn't have any fur. It was shiny and had little wings. Then he threw it back in the air. Then he caught a little tiny fur animal. The littlest fur animal in the world. It had warm, silky fur and even a little fur nose. So he kissed it right on its little fur nose and put it gently back in the grass. And the little tiny fur animal ran down a hole into the ground. The sun went down beyond the river. The sky grew wild and red, and the little fur child turned around and ran for home. And just as the darkness got very dark, he bumped into his big fur mother, and she took her little fur child home in her arms and gave him his supper. Supper is another word for dinner, which you are probably going to be eating soon. And there was his father who put him to bed, and they tucked him in bed all soft and all warm. And they held his paw and they sang him a song. Sleep, sleep, our little fur child, out of the windiness, out of the wild. Sleep warm in your fur all night long. In your little fur family, this is a song. He looks so cozy. The end. So this book made me think, I really like small creatures. This makes me think of the calico critters that some friends really like to play with in KH at Choice Time. I have little panda bears and I have some elephants. But that's what this book reminds me of. Maybe when you go outside, you can make a little home for a fur family. Sometimes people make fairy homes out of things that they find in nature, but we could try to make one for a little fur family. And remember, the little fur family found that even tinier, the tiniest fur, tiniest fur animal. So if that's something that you want to do, not necessarily today, but maybe tomorrow or on another nice day, you can make a little house or a little living place for something very, very small to live. And that's today's story. Bye, friends.